Welcome back to our special bulletin review, The Secure Remote Workforce, sponsored by Lookout here on Federal News Network. My guest today is Bob Stevens. He's the Vice President for Americas at Lookout, and I'm your moderator, Tom Temin. And Bob, I want to go back to that point about phishing, because as you say, that's the foundation for most of the cyber incidents that happen. So, and you've done a lot of research into the whole issue of phishing and the vectors they use and the effects they have. What are some of the horror stories, and what should agencies be on the lookout for, no pun intended, as they try to rein in this whole phishing issue?
Yeah, so I think one of the things they need to ensure is that they have some sort of phishing protection on their mobile devices, because I can tell you that most of them today have nothing. As I mentioned earlier, some of the more sophisticated attacks, and for sure the nation state attacks that we've seen, all start with some sort of phishing campaign. Just as an example, we saw one that targeted the Israeli Defense Force, and the troops there were sent a text, talking about attractive women, and if they clicked here, or maybe even attractive men, I'm not sure, it could have been both, but if you click here, you'll get access to some of the pictures, and of course a lot of them did it. And once they did, their device was infected, and they were able to pull all kinds of data off of the devices at that point, to include the credentials, and potentially gain access into the Israeli Defense Force network. We recently published some threat intelligence about another sophisticated attack that we called Silk Bean. It's in China. And it targeted the Muslim citizens living in China, and again it started with a phishing campaign. Once they clicked on the exploit, the device was infected, and it was almost impossible to get it off at that point. And the beauty of that campaign was that, of course, as we mentioned earlier, the mobile device goes everywhere with them. So when those targets were, leaving the country and going elsewhere and potentially meeting with other Muslims, then they could be spied upon, and they could learn more and more about the connections that they have and continue to build out their network, so that they understood where all of their targets were throughout the world. So again, pretty sophisticated campaign. All started with a phishing attack. So we really need to start paying attention to phishing on mobile devices. It's becoming more and more prevalent today.
Should we worry about the eventuality that the recipient of the phishing attack won't have to click on something, but people can simply send it via the text, if that's the case, and put the malware on without your having to do anything?
I have not seen that capability yet, although I've heard that there's a company called NSO, and they've been in the news a lot. I had heard that they had created an attack that didn't require you to click on anything, and the device would be infected. I don't know much about it, but I've heard. So yeah, in theory, what you talked about is coming, and of course that would be something that we would want to detect and ensure that it doesn't get into the government infrastructure.
Sure. Well, we'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it. In the meantime, agencies are using a lot more cloud applications so that the resources that users access are not simply the data centers, but also commercial areas, commercial cloud providers, cloud services providers. How has that affected how people should approach mobile security?
Well, as you know, the mobile devices are talking to a cloud all the time. Every application is talking to a cloud. I always think it's interesting when I go in and talk about the Lookout capabilities, and I inevitably get asked, are you guys just using cloud, or you're 100% cloud-based? And the answer is yes, we are. And there's reasons for that. The reason that we're cloud-based is if I put an agent on the device and I have all of my detection techniques or capabilities within that agent, somebody could reverse engineer that and now circumvent my technology. But by having things in the cloud, they don't understand what my techniques are. You can't reverse engineer the cloud. So it's very challenging for them, if not impossible, for them to figure out exactly what techniques we use for all of our detections. So I think, using a security solution like ours in the cloud is super important. But when I mentioned that to government agents, a lot of government agencies today, I was, oh wait, we can't use the cloud. But and I want to say to them, hey, every application that you use today is accessing the cloud. So, why are they different than we are?
Yeah, well, I guess you have to go no further than email, which almost every agency now has done the cloud version of email. That's almost universal in government. So to underscore what you say, the cloud is where the work is happening.
It's true, yeah, and let's think about just when an employee travels, what are they going to want to access while they're traveling? They're going to want, if they're flying United, they're going to want to access the United app, which is cloud, right? And if they're staying at a Marriott, they want to access the Marriott app, and if they want to take an Uber, right? I could go on and on. These are all conveniences of life now that are just expected, and you can't stop people from using them.
Sure, and that gets to the issue of application development, and there's a lot of news now about TikTok, a lot of TikTok talk, and I have to confess, I don't have it, I've never seen it, I'm not quite sure exactly what it is, but I see a lot of people laughing at it. But the China connection is the concern here. And so what about application development, the supply chain leading to apps and applications? And for that matter, is there anything in the mobile device hardware in terms of supply chain? Because those are mostly not U.S. content. How does that affect security, and is that something we can have any control over?
Yes. So let's address the applications. You're right. I mean, we have to be very concerned about where apps are being developed, or where the source delivery or SDKs, source delivery kits, are where they're being pulled from and used within an application. Which is why, again, the analysis of an app is very, very important, because that's when you're going to learn, where was that application written? Where is the data going? What kind of servers is it accessing? What kind of services is it accessing? Are there any, kits in there that came from another country that are going to introduce, vulnerabilities or malware that I wasn't aware of when I put that kit in there? So all that is very important. I can tell you there's legislation that's currently being written, specifically, in regards to China, that says that, anytime you use an application that has been written by any company in China, or uses some sort of SDK from any company in China, that the user is aware, which I think is important, but I also think it's got to be expanded. It can't be just China. I think there's other places that we would want to know if it was written in those countries, like Russia as an example. So the supply chain is super important, and the only way you can determine is to do a deep analysis of that application. And again, because there's so many updates that occur to apps, and there's so many apps that are available, you can't do it with people. You've got to do it with machine learning or AI. That's the only way to stay on top of it. Just to give you an idea, I think Lookout now has over 100 million applications in our corpus. Now, most people would say, okay, there's not 100 million unique apps out there. They're right, there's not. There's probably maybe 7-8 million unique apps. But we look at every version as a new application, because every version could introduce some sort of malware into the infrastructure.
All right, we've got about 30 seconds left. Let me just ask you this. With Lookout looking at all of the agency's mobile devices, do you see the data?
We do not see the data. Yes, it's a good point. We never look at any user data whatsoever. It is only the applications and the operating systems.
All right. Good place to close on. Thank you so much, Bob Stevens, Vice President for the Americas at Lookout. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
I'm your moderator, Tom Temin. This is Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Lookout.